I was 36 when I started working at a respectable law firm. The man in charge knew my father from years prior, so that was pretty much my way in. As soon as I entered the building, I met a female attorney that won my heart way faster than should have been possible. She had curly blonde hair and big blue eyes. It was like I was speaking with a model from 1955. We started seeing each other outside the law firm 2 months after I started. I was thrilled that she wanted to go out with me. We had a wonderful time together, filled with laughter after fun. A year later, she became pregnant, and it was the happiest news I ever heard. However, her face looked mortified, and she even said this wasn't good. I suddenly realized she was probably very career-driven, so I assured her she wouldn't have to stop being a lawyer, just take a long break and return to it. We still hadn't moved in together, but now that she was pregnant, I wanted her to. When I asked, all the color left her face. She said she couldn't and wouldn't tell me why at first. Then she said she took care of her elderly mother at home, so she couldn't move out, but she also didn't think her mother would approve of a child being there. I was confused because grandmothers usually love grandkids. She also never told me she lived with anyone. Another thing struck me funny, but I just couldn't place what it was. Somehow, I knew her story wasn't true. I asked if I could go with her to tell her mother the good news and introduce myself. She got sick right there, but blamed morning sickness. She said she'd rather handle this herself. I was pretty upset and uneasy. I wanted this child more than anything, but she seemed inconvenienced and distant from me. She didn't answer any of my calls over the weekend, so I started to fear she met some horrible end. But there she was at work on Monday. I rushed to her side and asked why she hadn't answered my calls. I wanted to know what was really going on. Finally, she broke down and she told me she was married. As the thought sunk in, the room spun and I fainted. When I came to, I was laying on a bench in the law firm. My girlfriend was there. Right away, she told me her relationship with her husband wasn't that great, which is why she started seeing me. I sat straight up and asked her if she planned on getting a divorce. She hesitated. I didn't think it was because she had feelings for this guy, but because of the image she tried to present. And maybe she enjoyed the home and routine they had together. I couldn't bear to think she still loved this guy or was still having sex with him, but that's exactly what it was. She went home and told her husband that night that she was pregnant with his child. He is ecstatic and posts it on the internet. I found the post and sent him a message. I explained that his wife had been seeing me since a little over a year prior, and she knew this baby was mine. I sent him pictures of us together. After that, he demanded that she comply with a DNA test. During the time it took for that to come back, we both distanced ourselves from this woman. She was apparently willing to lie and cheat. She was miserable and even asked me if she could sleep over. I told her no, even though it was hard to say that. I knew I could find a woman that was honestly single and wanted to build a life with me. The DNA test results revealed that I was not the father. Her husband was. I didn't realize until the results came in that I didn't want to be a father yet, especially not with her. So, I was obviously keeping my distance from her and told her so. Her husband filed for divorce, even though it was his child, because there was confusion about it in the first place. She lost everything, since he was able to prove her infidelity with my pictures and the whole reason for a DNA test in the first place. After she was divorced, she drove the small moving truck with her stuff to my house as a last-ditch effort to get my forgiveness. When I answered the door, she told me I went to great lengths to free her from her husband so that she could move in with me, and now the day is finally here. I just laughed. I said no way, I just wanted her husband to know she was a cheating skunk and if she was carrying my baby. Since she wasn't, we had no reason to keep in touch. I slammed the door hard. I was hurt and mad. She was lovely, and we could have been together had she gone about this the right way. Now she had no one. She tried to call or message me every day while she searched for a place to live. I wasn't invested in her story, but I was receiving updates and hate from her. She didn't seem to realize it was her own decisions that got her into this mess, and it shouldn't have been so hard for her to find her own place. She had money from her job, but she didn't want to live alone or be a single mother. The last thing I told her was that I didn't trust her to be my girlfriend, but someone else would, and when they did, she needed to be honorable and earn their trust. I also said that she shouldn't be as worried about finding a man as she should be about being a capable and prepared mother. The last thing she told me was that she should have divorced her husband and done things the right way before starting to date me. She regrets it every day and wonders where we would have gone in life. OP, I am so sorry your girlfriend started dating you and continued dating you for a year without mentioning her husband or living situation. It's devastating to me that she dragged you through this roller coaster of a relationship, but I am relieved it didn't go on for very long. You're extremely fortunate to not have been the father of the child, because then it would have been even harder to keep your distance from her. She didn't deserve anyone's trust, that's for sure. It was good of you to track down her husband and message him. She probably would have lived out the lie that this man fathered the child, even if he hadn't. This woman seems to have learned her lesson, but thankfully that's none of your concern anymore. Now with this second chance, you can find a woman that's honest from the start and really willing to dedicate herself to you. Thank you for sharing with us. Let's now get into our second story for today. My girlfriend and I were together for 4 years. We met after both of our apartments flooded, and we were put in neighboring hotel rooms. She had an upstairs apartment, and I had a downstairs one. Since we were both evacuated and forced to take a little getaway, we got to talking and found it hard to turn in for the night. I invited her to hang out in my hotel room and watch a movie, so she agreed. We talked the whole time and realized we were neighbors for 2 years and just didn't cross paths very often. We might have only seen each other twice in all that time. I also learned that she was quite lonely, like me. She was recently divorced and never had children. I had a daughter that I didn't get to see very often since she lived with my ex-girlfriend. I could tell she cared about me, and it bothered her that I had a child I couldn't see very much. Once the apartments were fixed, we started visiting each other every day for one reason or another. The first time, she came over and asked for sugar. The second time, I asked for salt. She invited me in and asked if I dated. I said I wasn't very eager to be rejected by a woman I could easily love. That's the first time we made love, and consequently began dating. This went super well for 2 years. We went roller skating, skiing, to the movies, to plays, to clubs, boating, and more. So much that I can't even remember, but it was a wonderful time. Then we decided she should move into my apartment to save on rent. She said she would love nothing more than to live with me and share a life together. It went really well for the first 6 months. During the last 6 months, she started to get really quiet. She didn't feel like having conversations with me anymore or telling me what was on her mind. Whenever we talked, it turned into a stupid argument. She started to treat me like I was stupid, and she was always right. I continued going on walks with her, but it wasn't hand in hand like we used to walk. She would look around and create chit-chat with any neighbors and let me keep walking. She started waving at anyone that would drive by, which was more attention than even I was getting. One day, when we were out, a tall man was standing outside our building smoking. I recognized him from before. I knew he lived in our building, but I didn't know his name or where he lived. My girlfriend started talking to him about his shirt that had a well-known television show on it. I stood there while she chatted away with this guy. When it seemed like long enough, I told her I was going back to the apartment, hoping it would make her come along too. She told me to go on without her. I was extremely upset by this. I said I wanted her to come along, but she just said she wanted to keep chatting with her new friend. I was highly annoyed now, but I wasn't going to leave her alone with this guy. I felt like she wanted me to let her go, so that she wouldn't have to break up with me. I sat down and told her I'd wait for her. It quickly became awkward, but the conversation droned on and on. This guy was interested in her and amused that I wanted her to leave him, but she wouldn't. Finally, I had to pee, so I went into the apartment. I came back 2 minutes later, and they were gone. I started screaming her name in frustration. A different woman peeked out and recognized me. She asked if I was okay, and I asked her if she knew where the tall guy lived. She hesitated, but she said she thought he lived in 215. I knocked on the door, but there was no answer. I sat in front of the door until it opened 2 hours later. It was my girlfriend. She was shocked I was still waiting there, and actually scolded me, saying she had enough and wanted to break up. I snapped and said if she felt that way, all she had to do was tell me, not lead me through this emotional torment. She said she was nervous to tell me since she'd just gone to all the trouble to move in. I asked her if she was talking about all the trouble I went through to move her in. I moved the furniture she wanted downstairs and, more importantly, made room in my heart for her. I allowed myself to trust her. I told her I took her in because I believed she loved me and wanted to be with me. She rolled her eyes and said this conversation was the exact reason she'd been avoiding me and went with another man. She said I was boring, but she didn't realize it until she lived with me. We stopped going out as much, and she didn't like how much I watched television. I told her she would never be content in a relationship as long as she lives, because it's about communication and improving life together. If she was bored, I didn't know that. I was living how I normally would, but with someone I loved. I felt like everything was fine. Instead of fixing the beautiful start we had, she doubted me. I told her to find another place to stay tonight, so she knocked on AP's door and he let her in. I was infuriated. I went inside my apartment and started carelessly bundling up all of her junk. I know I broke at least 2 things, but I didn't care. Let that be a representation of what she did to my heart. I had her stuff by my front door, but I wasn't sure if I should throw it away. All I could think about for the next 3 days was that I was going to have a hard time trusting anyone else, ever. That evening, she knocked on my door. I answered it and started putting her stuff just outside the door. While I did this, she sheepishly asked if she could stay in the apartment tonight. She was embarrassed to admit that AP didn't want her to stay in the apartment anymore. I laughed and slammed the door. I proceeded to watch her take all her stuff to the parking lot and sit on the curb. She waited a long time before someone came to pick her up. I assumed it was a member of her family that I never met, since she seemed to be expecting them, and they helped her get her stuff into the vehicle. I haven't seen her since. Since then, she's reached out to me a few times pleading for forgiveness, but I just ignore it. As far as I'm concerned, she's history. OP, it sounds like your ex lives off the thrill of starting relationships, but once the magic settles, she bails because the long haul takes compromise and communication. She liked the thrills and adventure, getting to know each other, but once all was learned, she wanted someone new. It's extremely disappointing when someone gives the impression that they're capable of commitment and selflessness, but fails as soon as the other person trusts them fully. I believe the only way to avoid this is to date someone slowly. Frequently and honestly communicate, develop a friendship, and simply to the best you can to build rapport with this partner. It's not wrong to test them sometimes, to see if they're trustworthy. As a matter of fact, if it's well thought out, it can help greatly. Don't be afraid to let a new partner know that you're nervous to trust them. A good person would understand and be more than willing to show you they deserve your trust. The only other thing to do is keep moving forward, no matter what unexpected thing happens. I wish you the best of luck in life, and thank you for sharing your story. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care.